Oh my word. So, Sasha, I am so thrilled to be sitting around this table. This is the table.
Yeah.
And we're having a conversation about your podcast, the She Word Young Women's Edition. And I just have to say, first of all, I'm just going to say, I am so proud. And you did the She Word so much honor and good and just an incredible season talking to young women, and also incredibly funny.
Yeah.
And incredibly powerful and empowering. And I just want to, first of all, just tell you some of my thoughts, and then I'm going to ask you about yours. But first of all, I should say before that, hey, how you doing?
Hello.
So good to see you.
Yeah, it's been a bit too long, is it?
Well, I've been abroad for 3 months over in Prague, and really just handed everything over to you and kind of let you run it, which was great.
Yeah.
Young Women with a Voice, obviously, was the first show, was incredibly powerful. And I just, when I saw that, I was utterly moved. Mental health was really touched me. I mean, the women on that show, the young women on that show, was so honest. Body image, I mean, that reiterated an issue that faces all women and doesn't go away, and it never seems to go away. Social media was very thought-provoking. What can I say about dating and sex? First of all, that has to be the funniest podcast I've ever seen. If you haven't seen it, go and see it because it's absolutely hilarious. But everybody, I've just been recording today and everybody is saying the same thing. Oh my gosh. I mean, when that show came out and I saw it and it was sent to me, I was like, okay, this has to be an 18 and above category on YouTube, because you guys really talked about it. Base level, basic.
Yeah.
This is how it is. And then the last show, which was Young Women and Motherhood, blew me away and really knocked my socks off. And I think for a lot of women, I mean, it just went through the roof with regards to the audience. Before we go into the details, how did you feel about the season, the women that you met, the role that you had?
I think there's like one feeling that really stands out, and it's how inspiring it was. Like after every episode, I would leave and go home, and I'm just like in awe of what can be created when women come together and they're actually placed in a comfortable space, the space that you've created and that you're sharing with everyone. And, you know, they're giving the opportunity to talk about things that touch them directly. I think all of the topics touch women in some way or another. Yes, finding the guests and inviting them, it was always like, you know, one person is going to be more fitting for that show and another woman is going to be more fitting for another. But I think at the end of the day, all of the things that we spoke about, we can all relate to them. Especially since, you know, it was the first season, and I think we kept the topics quite basic as well in terms of what we needed to cover. Yeah, I think one of my favorites was definitely sex and dating.
Sex and dating was everybody's favorite. I mean,
it was hilarious. I'm telling you, I started out that show hoping that it can, you know, be an informative discussion while still being fun, but I didn't think it was going to be that like filled with swear words.
Well, listen, it was absolutely gloves off.
Yeah,
I mean,
completely.
And I think that's something that was said in the podcast we were recording today, which is the first show of the new season. It was one of the things that all of the women around the table agreed on, is that there is 4 women in every show sitting around a table being brutally honest and saying, I mean, I can remember a couple of the shows, I got really choked up.
Yeah.
Really choked up. And I'm listening to you leading these podcasts and thinking to myself, wow, I mean, it's a podcast I would love to have been involved in. Because when women say things that other women are afraid to or don't feel like they can, that's when we start to make change.
Yeah. And I think you can agree with me. I mean, we're both the hosts right now, sitting down right now and having this discussion. Isn't it the most amazing feeling when someone tells you how comfortable you made them feel after the show? Because that, for me, that is like, okay, I did a good job, you know,
Yeah.
I'm accomplished. I
Yeah.
came here, I did what I needed to do. And these women left here, came here feeling, you know, everyone's a bit nervous, especially when you have guests that aren't used to being in front of the camera or speaking. So seeing them literally opening up and blossoming just in that hour. And then afterwards, like, you know what? Thank you for the opportunity and thank you for how comfortable you made me feel. I think that's the best compliment you can give me, literally.
You know what I also love, and it's an absolute privilege to do this podcast and a real honor. But what I also love is when you see relationships built
Yeah.
between women that have got this one theme in common. It could be anything. It could be, you know, menopause, or it could be
Yeah.
parenting or whatever. And they come together from all of different backgrounds. And for me, that just reiterates how important these discussions are.
Yeah.
Because I think the worst thing that we can possibly do is isolate other people or feel isolated, because that's when darkness comes. That's when depression comes, when you think that you're on your own,
Yeah.
and when anxiety comes. And just knowing, again, we had a podcast, we're recording this afternoon, we had a podcast, and one of the ladies said something, and you'll see it when it comes out next week, that I just jumped on. I said, thank you so much for saying that, because I've been thinking that for at least 30 years.
Yeah.
And just by voicing it, you kind of said what every other woman wanted to hear.
And then you kind of create a movement as well, right? Because that's how, like, even, for example, with women realizing that they're in a toxic relationship, for example, we touched upon that extensively in the relationships episode. Hearing other women speak out about their experiences can make someone who is currently in a toxic relationship or situation realize exactly what they are in. And that applies for any topic whatsoever, you know? That's the power of speaking out and awareness. You are creating a chain reaction of support at the end of the
Absolutely.
day.
Absolutely. Listen, I have one phrase that was said in a podcast in season 1, which I keep repeating over and over again. It really stuck with me. I'm not going to repeat it again because I've like thrashed it to death. But was there anything that was said in any of the podcasts that you just keep thinking about, that's lived with you, like a phrase or something that someone said that you're like, wow, and you keep repeating it over?
So two things. So when I was watching back the episodes, you know how each woman gives her closing note at the
Yeah.
end of every show. And many women repeated the same thing, even in different episodes, like regardless of the team. And it was basically like to speak out when you need help and to seek out help and support and to be yourself. Like those, I kept hearing them echoing. And I think something else that really, really touched me in terms of my own experience was in the social media episode, when we were talking about the algorithm. And I asked the women around the table, I told them, do you ever feel like you're a slave to the algorithm? Because I often feel it myself, you know,
Yes.
when I'm
Yeah,
trying
yeah.
to keep up with my Instagram, with content creation, with putting myself out there even more, with like finding out what's working for me and my account. And yeah, it was like all the other women were like, yeah, totally. Like we feel that. So, and I think even on a general note, it was really eye-opening because the experiences that you think you're experiencing by yourself, you're actually not. Even the most particular ones, like the niches, you know, oh, no one could possibly be going through the same thing I am. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, yeah.
thousands are
Yeah,
probably
yeah.
going through the same thing you are, you know?
That's it. I think that's one of the reasons that we're doing this podcast in the first place.
Yeah.
And I have to say, I've said it all the way along. You know, I have to thank Maxine, who came on a previous podcast nearly a year and a half ago and talked about miscarriage. And suddenly and she was probably one of the first people in Malta to speak so explicitly about that. And it was the reaction from that that awakened me to realize, you know, I can't necessarily take away your experience, but if you know that you aren't on your own,
Exactly.
then you have more power.
Exactly.
And I think this is why we're going to keep doing this, or we're going to keep doing the Young Women's Edition, and while we need to also address men, because the same applies for them.
Yeah.
Was there anything that was said in any of your shows that really took you by surprise? I mean, dating and sex aside, because I think pretty much everything that was said in that show took me by surprise. I sat there going, oh, really? Oh, no, are we saying that? Okay.
I mean, it's hard to pinpoint just one thing, but for an instance, like seeing people, especially those that live a lot on social media, people that really seem put together, talking about like hardships or difficult moments, I think that's like kind of a stark reminder that we're all experiencing these things. Even when sometimes there's kind of like a veil created, especially because social media tends to portray like the ideal, the perfect, the best days, you know, the 10% really.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important for women out there to remember that no one really is that perfect. And to hear these role models talking about their hardships, you know, it's going to make it easier for everyone. Yeah, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Did you get a lot of feedback from the show? Did you get a lot of people getting in
Oh,
touch?
yes.
Really?
Yes. Like so much. Like the amount of people that reached out to me on Instagram, either suggesting like new themes for the new season. And this was like after 1 or 2 episodes
Oh
of
my
the Young Women's
gosh.
Edition. People were already getting in touch, saying that they're loving the episodes. Like I had some of my close colleagues at work even watching them and coming like to work to discuss the show. The support was incredible. Like even from my own family. I even had some men reach out, which I think it's important for men to also watch these shows, you know, because sometimes I think people get a bit thrown off. It's like, oh, it's like a feminist discussion, you know, you're only including women. But it's really not. I mean, women were not empowered for a very long time, for the larger part of history. I mean, you can even look at it through art history. Women are literally not mentioned anywhere, you know? So I think it's fair that we're getting this type of attention on our matters in this day and age. But as you said before, now it's men's turn. Because even I remember when we were doing the mental health episode, men were mentioned a lot because the statistics are starting to point towards men having a bit of a harder time to open up than women.
Well, by far, suicide rates in men is
Yeah.
far, far, far higher than women.
Yeah.
We do have the advantage that we get to have these conversations. And again, this is why we're going to be addressing this within this format,
Yeah.
because we get to have these conversations. And I think it's about time that men got the opportunity to do that too.
Yeah. Some men sometimes reach out to me and they're like, I want to be on the show.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm like, you know what? I would love to have you on the show, but it's currently like, you know, this is the current format. But, you know, it's in the pipeline.
Yeah.
Something
for
will
sure.
be here soon, you know? It's like, because
So
they
good.
deserve that voice as well.
Absolutely.
I think men always got the attention in terms of like their opinions mattering more, or in politics, or like being the breadwinner or the leader of the family. But in terms of men talking about their problems, their mental health, I don't think they even find that support within their friend groups, which is very different. It differs a lot to women, because women tend to have a bit of a support group. At least for myself, like I'm grateful enough that, you know, I have like those women that I can kind of fall back on. But I notice that men don't, to a certain extent.
We talk about this in the show next week, because we reference the fact that that men have had in history, whilst women maybe have not had the highlight and been highlighted in any particular field, men have been the breadwinner and been,
Exactly.
you know, the hunter and that sort of thing. And men themselves are in this huge dichotomy at the moment, where as John Malia said on a recent interview I did with him, men are being required to be softer, more sympathetic, more empathetic, and they're being, as much as women pushed into women advancing into new roles, men are being required to take on new roles as well. So we will be tackling that, but bang on, absolutely. I want to know what your favorite moment or part of a show, of any of the shows that you did? Is there something you're like, oh, that was funny, or it was brilliant, or?
Honestly, it's something that I reshared recently on Instagram, on the sex and dating episode.
Of
I
course it
remember
was.
I was really, really desperately trying to find the right words, to not use anything along the lines of fuck or shit, and you could see it in my eyes because I was basically trying to ask them, like, do you think that men have it easier when it comes to, having sexual relations, like whatever they want to do? And as I was looking for the exact words, Maya, one of the guests sitting opposite me, was like, fuck around. And I gave her this look like, yeah, that's what I was looking for, but I was trying to find something, a bit more maybe PG 13, like something along those
No,
lines.
I gave up after 50 minutes. This was never going to be a PG show. PG show. If you're easily offended, it's not a show to watch. But if you want to be inspired and absolutely empowered, it's a fantastic, fantastic show. What's your takeaway thoughts from this first season? I think you kind of already touched on it about the sharing, but if there's like one way that you could summarize that.
Both as a person, as a journalist, as a host, as an artist, I think my main goal, and I even said this when I was just a guest on the She Word, around a year ago, the importance of raising awareness. Like, honestly, I can't stress it enough. And it doesn't just apply to women's issues, it applies to everything. It applies to the safeguarding of our environment. It applies to climate change, everything. Like, it's such a tool, which I think sometimes we overlook, that can bring so much change, and within the human aspect, like we're all having this human experience. Life can get pretty challenging constantly or with certain events, but when we speak out, when we seek help, and when we kind of create this sense of community, a sense of community which I feel like is being lost within the Maltese culture and even beyond, I think it's important that we make sure that the sense of community at least is created on the internet, for example, through these shows, through many other things that could help people feel more supported while they're going through like literally anything,
So you've mentioned activism.
Yeah.
And that's something that you really want to empower women to get involved with. Anything else?
Women and health.
Oh.
Young women and health. Yeah, I mean, not just because it directly touches upon my experiences, and not just because that was literally what brought me to the She Word initially, but you have no idea how many conversations I have with women who have PCOS or endometriosis, the long years that they wait for diagnosis. There are many, many in Malta which deserve to have their stories heard. And yeah, I think that will probably be at the top of my agenda.
For some reason, over the last couple of months, I've seen this show requested more than any others.
Yeah.
It seems to be that women and women's health is really rising to top of the agenda. And I think that would be fantastic because for me, I'm an old timer and you kind of expect things to go wrong. But I think, as you said, women and women's health in young women is critical.
Yeah.
Oh, that'd be fantastic. That'd be a brilliant, brilliant show.
Especially when you kind of keep in mind that, especially in Malta, like in other countries, it's gotten a bit better, but in Malta, there has been no focus on women's health for decades. Like, it's not even included in their syllabus when they're becoming doctors at the university. And some of the things that women get told when they're in front of their doctors or their gynecologists are just absurd, literally absurd.
And now that means I have to come back to that phrase that I'm trying not to quote again because I quote it all the time, but women just get on with it. And that's why so many times these things don't come to the forefront because women just get on with it.
Yeah.
So you're right, we need to make a noise.
Yeah.
Was there anything that you've been thinking already? I need to have a show about this. We need to discuss this. Are there any big hot topics that you think are on the agenda?
Well, I actually already have a little bit of a list.
Oh my word, she's been doing her homework.
And I think it's like more than just another season at this point. But I think one that really stands out for me, and especially because it touches upon my role directly within society, one of my many roles, it's activism, particularly women in activism. Like, there's a lot to be said, I think, there. And even, for example, with the experiences that they might have, for example, with participating in public demonstrations and organizing them and spearheading them, like, there's a lot that needs to be said, I think. And there are some women which deserve to have the spotlight on them. I did have more topics, but honestly, right now,
Keep them to yourself.
yeah.
I can't wait for the second season.
Yeah,
I
me
want to
too.
say a huge, huge thank you for doing such an amazing job on that Young Women's edition. If you haven't seen it, it's on the same YouTube channel, the She Word Interviewer on YouTube. Go and see it. Particularly, I have to say, dating and sex will make you laugh, but they are all incredibly inspiring and powerful episodes. Thank you so, so much.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity, for showing me how it really feels to be sitting at the head of that table and just witnessing the magic happen, you know?
That's it.
Beautiful.